Like, our team is burden for souls. Burden for souls. Now, burden in this context is a blessing. When God wants to bless a man, when God wants to conscript a man into his program, the first thing that God makes available to that vessel is burden. Because burden translates into compassion. I like you to get that point. Burden translates into compassion. And it is very impossible to generate the power of God in an atmosphere that is devoid of compassion. You will always read, before every miracle Jesus did, the Bible will always register, he had compassion on them. And he had compassion on them. So when you become compassionless, the power of God is not in view. When we come to a point where we can no longer trace any element of compassion in our lives, at that point, the only thing that can be available to you is probably the gift of the Spirit that you already have. Because the gift of the Spirit can function even when God has not approved you. That's why some people are not, except you are discerning, you may not be able to know when the gift of the Spirit is at work and when the presence of God is hosted in a place. They are two different things. If somebody, for example, has the gift of healings, it is called the gift of healings, plural. You know why? Because even in the gift of healings, it's like the way medical doctors operate. There are those who are orthopedics. There are those who are specialists in heart matters. So in the gift of healing, you see there are some people who are alleged, they don't any bone condition doesn't pass them by. Have you seen Dr. Nenche operating? His eye does not see anything bone. That's a department in the gift of healing. Some people deaf. So the gift of healing is like that. If somebody has the gift of healing, he has the gift already. He may pray for somebody, and by the gift he has, healing can take place. That is not sequel to saying that because healing just took place, God is with that fellow. No, that's not the case. So what we're saying is that one of the things that generates God's presence, it means that if I am compassionate, as a matter of fact, every evangelist should be compassionate. The reason why every evangelist should be compassionate is because every evangelist must have burden for souls. If you are an evangelist, you call yourself an evangelist and you don't have burden for souls, you are just a herbalist. You are not an evangelist. That's why I see some people come. How can an evangelist be comfortable to host a crusade, preach for 2 hours, and at the end of the message, he does not make altar call for souls? The only altar call that is made is for raising money. So you can see how far some people have deviated because burden is lacking. Burden is lacking. Where there is burden, there is compassion. And where there is compassion, it's a chain reaction. So you see, there is burden. Burden generates compassion. And where compassion is expressed, the presence and the power of God is made manifest. And that manifestation of God's presence is outside the economy of the gifts of the Spirit. Are you following me? It means that God can bypass the gifts and walk by himself. Healing can take place through a person who does not have the gift of healing. Do you know how that happens? That can happen by the expression of the compassion of God. So God goes ahead to do it. So he's not taking leverage on the economy of the giftings of the Spirit, but on compassion. Because compassion in itself is an economy. Now, the problem we have is that we have a lot of people who would rather, have their own needs met, have their own desires met, to the detriment of God's need. I have read in the Bible that God is a needy. Do you know God is a needy? God is a needy. God presents himself as a needy. And in case you don't believe, Jesus came one day and said, if you have done this to the least of the brethren, you have done unto me. He said, the righteous will say, when did we do this? He said, the day you gave that guy, that poor guy, he said, you were giving it to me. So Jesus typifies himself in the person of a beggar, in the person of a needy. So God is in need. And in case you don't know what God needs, I will show you one today. God needs souls. Yes, sir. God needs souls. Here where we read, I don't want to deviate from my text because this text is loaded.